People of the Ecom Dispensary, welcome freaking back to Knowledge Drop number 18. This one, we got episode number 75 for you here. And this one, we're talking about, yes, it is indeed true. There's a very high chance that if you're listening to this, that you are miles ahead of quote unquote most people. Now, I want to start off by saying that I'm not usually a huge fan of like shitting on like most people and like just like shitting on the average guy because it doesn't really get you anywhere, you know. But this is something that I wanted to talk about because I think it's an important thing to keep in mind, especially as you progress along in business. I tend to forget about, kind of like how far I've come because I have such lofty goals for things that I want to do in life. And those things can sometimes stress me out when, the results aren't as great as I'd like them to be. And things aren't always going, peachy keen, rainbows and roses 100% of the time. Sometimes I think, people who do this kind of entrepreneurship thing, we can be pretty hard on ourselves. And I think this is an important thing to keep in mind, especially if you're someone like that, because it really does put things in perspective just how far ahead, if you're a part of the Ecom Dispensary, if you're involved with, our little community on Twitter, I don't even know, I guess like you call it money Twitter. If you are just like aware of certain things, you are so far ahead of so many people. And we wanted to talk about what those things are in case for one, if you don't know what those things are, then we should probably talk about that. But again, just to, keep it in mind. So this was inspired by a conversation I had with a dude I met at the driving range the other day. I was at the driving range as I do, hit the range a few times a week, practice my golf game. And I saw someone a few bays down wearing a Funnel Hacker shirt, which if you don't know is a ClickFunnels thing. It's their like, I don't even know. Just Scott, do you even know what that is? Like, I've never even seen, what actually that is.
I guess it's just what they call the people that are part of their community, funnel hackers.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think there's like a program of some sort where like, I don't know, it's like a weekly thing. I'm not exactly sure. The dude that I met who had that shirt on was talking about it a little bit. But I met this dude. He was like probably about my parents' age, probably in his 50s. I saw him wearing the shirt. I went over. I was like, "Yo, dude, nice shirt. Like, you do stuff online?" He's like, "Yeah. I do coaching and consulting, and blah blah blah, whatever." I ended up talking to him for like a half hour. Honestly, him and his buddies him and his buddy were there. I talked to them for a while. They were pretty cool. But in talking to him, I kind of learned a little bit more about who he was. And he was basically this dude who he seemed like a family man. I didn't ask him if he had kids, but he seemed like he probably had kids. He works in the IT space. He works a 9-to-5 job. He's not full time on the funnel hacking, ClickFunnels grind. And I think from the sounds of it, it sounds like he makes solid money. He lives a good life. It sounds like he doesn't work crazy long work weeks or anything.
Not if he was at the driving range at 2 p.m. with you.
Yeah, I guess so. That was a little bit later. That was probably the 4 or 5 o'clocker. But I think he does well for himself. But ultimately, like he wants to be doing online stuff full time. He does not want to work a job. He wants to be doing all this, fancy funnel hacking rigmarole full time. That's how he wants to make a living, which I can't say I blame him because that's how I want to make a living too. And that's kind of how I do make a living. But it was just it was an interesting conversation because he's kind of exposed to a lot of the same kind of influences that we are. These kind of like self-improvement principles and marketing principles and things like that. And it was just funny talking to this dude who was a lot older than me, and I'm not like trying to shit on this guy or anything, but he was like, he kind of seemed like a bit of a noob, I guess, with with online business stuff. He was, talking all about providing value and, building his network and, just these kind of like typical like buzzwords, I guess, that you hear in like the self-improvement and like online business type space. And it just got me thinking about like, this guy probably lived a completely normal life for however long. And then recently in his older age, found all of these things that, we're all exposed to on a daily basis that are basically, I mean, for me and, you know, obviously definitely for you as well, Scotty, these things are just like kind of givens. They're not really things that we think about. They're just things that we know to be true. And I just didn't really think a whole lot about it because it's just such an integrated part of my life now. And in talking to this dude, I just had this realization like, oh my God, dude, like I really am freaking ahead of the game. Like I'm not trying to pat myself on the back too much, but it just made me think like, holy hell, like this guy's just figuring this stuff out in his 50s. And I feel like obviously I don't have everything figured out, not even close, but I feel like I had a better concept of a lot of these things than he did, despite the fact that I'm probably like half his age. And that was pretty crazy. That was a pretty crazy experience. It was a pretty crazy realization to have. And it made me feel good. I'm not going to lie. It made me feel pretty good.
Yeah. It's like everyone talks about compounding and investing, but in terms of skills and experience in business, I think it's equally true. And I mean, getting started in your 50s when you have a family and kids, a job, it must be a lot harder because not only do you not have the same energy, you're probably also a little slower on the computer, not as up to date with trends or whatever. They're probably much more risk averse even than me. And when you're getting started, it takes a lot of grinding. It takes hard work, especially if you're working a job on the side and then coming back to work on your side projects. And grinding when you're actually missing out on something. You're actually missing out on spending time with your kids and family. Whereas for us, it's like when I was grinding, like I wasn't really missing out on much. I was missing out on video games and smoking weed, but like wasn't really much to miss after school when you're in high school getting started with stuff. But for him, it's different. So just getting started young is obviously a huge advantage. I don't want to transition away from your story with this guy quite yet, but I've got sort of similar examples that are very different, but we can talk about in a bit.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to. And like my whole point in this is not like to like put this guy down or anything. I think it's actually, I mean, I think it's super dope that he's at this stage of his life and is getting involved with these types of things. Like I'm a strong believer that it's never too late, regardless of how old you are, unless you're like 65 and like dying of terminal cancer or something. Then, you know, in that case, I'll be honest, it's probably too late. But for the majority of people, I really don't think it's ever too late. And it's like Scotty said, the older you are, the more responsibilities you have, the harder it's going to be. But that doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. It doesn't mean it's not possible. And I just thought it was really cool to see that. But it was also really cool just that contrast of just being like, oh my God, it made me feel really grateful, man. Like really grateful for all the knowledge that I've been able to gain from Twitter, from various books, from all the different influences that I've been exposed to over the course of the last few years being involved in all this online business stuff. We're so freaking fortunate to know about these things. Like incredibly. It's nuts. I mean, like we talked about this before in previous episodes, like hacking the matrix. We're literally hacking the freaking matrix, man. Like I shouldn't be able to plan my day around when I want to play golf, but I absolutely do. And like, it's a freaking beautiful thing. I shouldn't have as much free time as I do, but I do. And it's a beautiful thing. And, I don't know. I guess I kind of want to, Scotty, what do you think? I want you to tell some of your experiences, your stories, but I also want to talk more specifically about what are some of these key concepts that people really need to be, let's say, abreast of. You like that? I like the word abreast. It's been a while since I used that word. You know, what are some of these key things that people need to be aware of that are really going to put them so far ahead of quote unquote most people?
I think acquiring valuable skills, namely copywriting, sales. If you're in marketing, obviously, if you're in tech, I don't know what it is, coding, whatever the fuck. Management, emotional control, personal finance, saving. Those are things that, if learned while young, especially, will just make a huge difference over 10 years.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that all kind of relates to one of the key concepts that we're always talking about, which is the power of compounding. Like that's another huge concept that I don't think most people really have a great, concept or idea of. All of these things, if you, again, like Scotty was saying, if you learn these things young and you apply them to your life over the course of 10, 20, 30 years, the results of that are just going to be nuts because it seems like a small thing, but then over the course of time, compounded over and over daily, it's really, I mean, it's just incredible what the results of that can be. I think other things, just like the concept of like the fact that you can make an independent income, like you don't have to work for someone to make a living. So many people, I just feel like that they don't even see that as an option for them. And I mean, for a while, I didn't really see it as an option for me. Like I kind of had this vague idea in my head that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really believe it was like a realistic thing that I could do like in college or right out of college, drop out of college. That's a huge one. And then, in doing that, I think probably the biggest skill is direct response marketing. That skill of copywriting, direct response marketing, being able to put an offer in front of someone in a way that is compelling and makes them want to buy. These skills are timeless. I mean, these are things that will improve your life immensely. And especially if you're starting young, it's such a huge freaking advantage, man. It's absolutely massive.
100%. I also go a step further from an independent income to owning a business that makes money while you sleep, makes money without your direct work input. And that kind of goes into my examples where I'm hanging out with a lot of expats or digital nomads. And there's a clear and massive divide between people who have remote jobs, people who are freelancers, have little agencies or whatever, and people who have businesses that generate money whether they work or not. The people who have a business that generates money for them have a lot more freedom, a lot more time, and they also, funny enough, enjoy working a lot more. Freelancers and like people who work remote jobs, they kind of still see work as like same way a 9-to-5 employee sees work. Something you have to do Monday through Friday. Weekend, I don't think about it. The guys who are doing it here, they're living a good life. Like they're making decent money. They're doing much better than they ever were before in the US, being freelancers, independent, living abroad. But they do not have the same freedom that I do, or that other people that own a business that generates money for them have. And they also don't enjoy their work as much, which is an interesting divide. Like basically, they all kind of want what I have or what a bunch of us have. But the problem with that is starting a business, it's front loaded work. You have to put in a bunch of work with no guarantee you're getting paid. Like you will not get paid for the first 6 months or forever how long it takes. There's no guarantee that your work's going to pay off. And it's hard to put in work with no guarantee of payoff unless you're like super motivated to do so. A lot of people do it while they're in the States because they want to leave their job, right? So they have strong motivation because they really want to leave their job. But for these guys, they've already left their job. They've already improved their life. They don't have a strong enough motivation to grind for 6 months, do their freelance work on the one side, and then on top of that, work on their own projects. And that's a huge divide. A lot of people struggle with that, with doing that unpaid work that can maybe down the line lead to not having to do the daily work, not having to respond to clients, not having to do whatever. And again, it goes back to like that Wall Street Playboys thing of like, okay, freelancing, having a side income is cool, but really you need to make money while you sleep. You need to build a money-making machine. And that is, again, one of those things I learned early that has just paid off immensely for me. Because like my experience with freelancing is like I made a couple $100 pretty fucking fast as a copywriter, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to make passive income. And I stuck to that partly because I was still in school. I was living at home. I didn't need to make money. So I invested. I did that upfront work with no payoff for a while so that later on I just made money without actually having to work. Which is pretty fucking cool.
It is pretty cool, man. It is pretty cool. I do want to be careful when you say passive income because it's not exactly passive, but it's not nearly as active. It's not directly active. It's like kind of indirectly active, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I open my laptop every day and fuck around a little bit, but like, it's very different. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad that I was exposed to that kind of concept early as well, because that was always my plan from the beginning. Like I never wanted to start a business that I was going to have to, be directly involved with all the time. That was, the whole draw of ecom is like the store runs all the time, 24/7. Me and Scotty right now are freaking recording this. And we're just shooting the shit on freaking Zoom, and our brand's making sales. Our brand's making sales. Should I turn the notifications on so we can get the cha-chings? I probably won't do that. That's a little douchey. But yeah, I mean it's a beautiful freaking thing. And when you have a concept of that, I mean, dude, it's just like it's different levels of living. Like it's actually nuts, man. The different levels of like, I guess at the bottom you'd have like, working a low paying job, scraping by, like you're trading your time for money. And then, you have like a higher paying job where you're more comfortable, but still kind of trading your time for money. And then I guess a step above that would be like freelancing, working for yourself, but still trading your own time for money. And then once you get to the point where you own a business and you're not trading your own time for money, that's like the ultimate level of like self-actualization, I think, because then like the main thing that you're like thinking of on a day-to-day basis is like, well, how do I want to spend my time today? Which is like, in the grand scheme of things, a really crazy thing to have the ability to do. Like that's like one of my main things is like, well, how do I want to spend, I'm going to work for a few hours this morning, but like, how do I want to spend the rest of my day? And most people like, like we're so fortunate, man. Like most people don't even have that ability. Like they're like, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to work from this hour to this hour. I'm going to get home. I'm going to cook dinner. I'm going to chill out, and then I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to do it again. And then at that point, you're just living for the weekend. And I feel very grateful to not be living for the weekend. In fact, I like the weekend less than the week, to be completely honest with you.
That's funny.
The weekend, I feel obligated to do a bunch of things because all my friends don't have work or, obligations. And I'm just like, dude, I'm trying to do these things on a Monday, on a Tuesday, when it's less busy. That's another quite nice advantage. Hitting things when they're not busy. I very much like that.
Yeah. Going back to the freelancer versus business owner concept of the divide, there's a really simple explanation for why you need to be a business owner. The only way that you're going to get paid massively, the only way you're going to get rich is by owning a business. It's the only way you capture all the value that not only you create, but also your team creates.
What about Dogecoin, man? I think you're forgetting Dogecoin.
When you're a freelancer, in order to be a successful freelancer, and this is a rule that a lot of freelancers unfortunately don't actually meet, you have to create more value for the business that you're working for than you're getting paid. You have to make them more money than you're getting, substantially more money. Most people don't, though, because most people suck. But if you're a business owner, you capture all the value that you create and that your team creates. And that is how dipshits like me and Schmitty get paid an amount of money that nobody would ever pay us to do what we do. Like nobody would pay me the amount of money that I pay myself to talk for an hour on this podcast and answer Skype messages and Slack messages and emails all week. Nobody would pay me my hourly rate that I get to do the job I do. The only reason it works is because I own the business and I built the business. No, I could never do what I do as a freelancer and get paid anywhere near as much as I do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I do wonder if there are, I think there are certain exceptions, where you could be like an operations, head of operations for a bigger e-com company. I think that could be, a potential option. But I mean, I agree in general because that's how it works, man. That's how it works. The only way that it makes sense as an employee for someone to employ you is if you're generating more value than they're paying you. So you're always going to get paid less than what you're worth. And when you run a business, you're getting paid exactly what you're worth because it's all funnel into you. And honestly, you might even be getting paid more than you're worth, to be completely honest. But that's kind of the general conversation here, guys. Like, keep this in mind. We kind of got off on some tangents there, but for me, like, I'm always exposed to so many people who are just such high performers that sometimes it makes me feel like I'm behind, like I'm not where I want to be. And that can, sometimes stress me out, make me anxious a little bit. But then when you think about things like this, it kind of puts things in perspective and you start to realize like, hey, I'm not where I want to be quite yet, but I'm on the right path. I've come a long way. And as long as I continue down this path, then, things are going to be good. Things are going to be great. And to wrap it all up, I think it all comes back to the same kind of concept we're always talking about. On a long enough time scale, if you're building skills, you're building online businesses, you're investing, you're just freaking showing up every day, you're going to look back in 10 plus years and be like, holy hell, like I have come so far. And that's what we all want. That's what me and Scotty want for ourselves. That's what we want for you beautiful people. And yeah, keep it in mind. Keep it in mind. Scotty, you got anything else to add?
I do not for now. I think we've shot the shit for long enough.
Alrighty. Well, in that case, folks, we will talk to you guys in the next one.